Sarah O'Neill and her son Chris have just moved to the countryside, and we see this new place they have moved in lies in the middle of the dense forest. Sarah and Chris are traveling back from the amusement park, and it is a long way road through the thick forest. While driving, she gets distracted by the conversation with her son and hits a person that has appeared out of nowhere with the car's side view mirror. She stops her car and gets out to check on that person. Despite being hit by the mirror, this woman named Noreen Brady is standing still in the middle of the road, mumbling, "He is not my son." As Sarah is about to pick up the mirror, she sees Noreen staring at her son in the car. Seeing this eerie scene, she quickly picks up the mirror and rushes to the car. After reaching home, Chris gets frightened by a spider, and Sarah catches it and releases it outside the house. Just then, Chris says that his father would have killed the spider for him if he were here. He then asks why they have moved without his father. He calls Sarah a liar for saying that his father would be right behind them and runs towards the forest. Worried, Sarah also follows Chris into the forest, but within a moment, she loses sight of her son. She goes searching for him, calling his name, but he is nowhere to be seen. Just then, she finds a gigantic hole in the middle of the ground. Thankfully, Chris calls Sarah from behind. He asks her what that is, referring to the hole, to which she replies with nothing, and they return back home. At night, she hears the door creaking. She then locks the door before going to check on her sleeping son. The next day, she goes to pick up Chris at the school, but she sees him with a gloomy face and has a flyer for a talent show. Sarah knows Chris is having a hard time adjusting to the new school environment. Therefore, she encourages him to sign up for the program so that he can get the opportunity to make new friends. But he is just not interested in making new friends. Through her colleagues, Sarah comes to know about Noreen Brady, or Walkie-Talkie as they call her. According to the people, she is a crazy old lady who lives up in the nearby hills. Rumors have it that she has murdered her own kid, but one of Sarah's colleagues, Louise, disagrees with the rumors. She was a classmate of James, Noreen's son. As per her, he was a really nice and friendly kid, and also a nature lover. One day in the past, Noreen came bustling into the class and started screaming insane things about him. After that, James got off school, and Noreen was taken to the hospital for treatment. And months later, an accident took place, killing James. That night, creaking and banging noises keep Sarah up. She goes to check on Chris, but she could not find him in his bed. Confused, she calls out Chris's name. She realizes that the noise is coming from downstairs and heads there. Just then, the door starts creaking, and suddenly, it starts banging as well. Unable to find Chris inside the house, she goes outside to search for him in the depth of the night. Once outside, all she could see with the flashlight are the column of thin tree trunks. She suddenly sprints back to her house and calls the emergency number to report her missing son. She tells the call operator that someone might have taken away her son. Just then, the door creaks once more, and suddenly, Chris is standing by the door. She furiously asks him where he has gone, but Chris responds that he has been in the house the whole time. He is concerned about his mother and asks her if she is okay. Sarah is stunned by his question. The next day, Sarah goes for a checkup, and the doctor inquires about the scar on her forehead. She tells him that she got it from an accident a year ago. The doctor then prescribes her some medicine to take before bed. At night, after taking the medicine, she goes to bed. The next morning, she wakes up to Chris sitting right beside her bed, holding flowers in his hand. Although Sarah does not allow him to go outside on his own, he has gone to the garden to get some flowers, just so he can surprise her with them. Next, we see Sarah has come to pick up Chris from school. She finds it a bit odd, but is still glad to see him, happily interacting with other kids. While they are on their way back to their home, she talks to him about his new friends. On the way, they see Noreen walking slowly in front of their car. She honks the horn and gets off the car to ask her to move aside. Again, like before, Noreen repeats the phrase, "It's not your boy." Just then, Des, Noreen's husband, comes to get her. While Sarah and Des are introducing each other, Noreen goes and stands next to Chris. Unexpectedly, she starts slamming and banging her head on the window, shouting, "He is not your son." Hardly, as Des holds off Brady, Sarah drives away. At night, after kissing Chris a goodnight kiss, she takes her prescribed medicine and goes to sleep. The next day, she stops by Noreen's place. Inside, she is surprised to see Noreen lying on her stomach with her head buried in the ground. This grotesque body has twisted fingers in her hands and ravens feeding on it. Soon, 2 officers arrive to take Sarah's statement regarding Noreen's death. Then, when she looks at her son playing with one of the officers, in a flash, she sees Chris breaking the other person's hand This scares her, but turns out that it is just her imagination. Later, after finishing her bath, she notices blood spots on her towel. All of a sudden, her scar has started bleeding. Next, Sarah goes to work, despite her boss allowing her to take some time off. She asks her if she has ever looked at her kids and not recognized them. Here, she is talking about the kids' personalities, like they seem to be a whole different person. Hearing her, the boss asks if she is alright. After a few days, Sarah has come to Noreen's house where they're having a funeral. Des comes to have a chat with Sarah, and he talks about James. She asks him why Noreen might have said that Chris is not her son. Des then tells her a story. When James was 8, Noreen started observing slight changes in him. For some reason, she thought James has become different. Later on, Noreen was fully convinced that James was not their son, but an imposter. In the end, James was hit by Des's car, and Des claims it to be an accident. The next morning, Sarah is out jogging when she notices a toy soldier lying on the ground by the edge of that gigantic hole. She then sits to observe the hole and feels like the hole is coming alive. Later at home, Sarah asks Chris if he has gone anywhere near the forest, besides going to the garden for flowers the other day. Holding the toy, she sternly demands the truth from him. Chris tells her that he is telling the truth and that he has not gone anywhere else. He becomes angry with his mother's threatening voice, and in a fit of anger, he pushes the dining table towards her. Immediately, he apologizes to her and nervously walks out of the kitchen. At night, when she comes out of the bath, she hears Chris giggling in his room. Slowly, she peeps through the door gap and sees Chris on his fours, chasing a spider. She then shifts to look through the keyhole and sees Chris eating the spider. Terrified, she steps back, but the floorboard creaks, attracting Chris's attention. Sarah runs to her room, and Chris comes out, asking where she is. She replies that she is already in bed. Hearing this, he returns back, after wishing her good night. The next day, Sarah takes Chris to the doctor for a checkup. She tells the doctor that something is not right with her son, but she can't pinpoint it. The doctor asks her if the medication he has prescribed her is working. Then, he asks her some personal questions about her husband and the scar on her forehead, as if it's not Chris who's being weird, but it's her. Sarah has been skeptical all day long. She can't get her mind off the recent incidents, so she goes to the town to buy a camera. Later, she comes back home and sees Chris busy watching TV. Then, she sneaks into his room and installs the camera. Right then, Chris comes into the room and asks her what she is doing. She grabs a nearby laundry bin and replies to him that she has come to get the laundry. A while later, while she is hanging the laundry, she notices Chris looking at her through the window. That night, Sarah takes a pill in her hand and is hesitant to take it. She had a nightmare where she saw Chris digging his finger into her forehead scar. The next day, she wakes up to the sound of Chris humming music notes, and that day, she attends Chris's school event. However, when it's Chris's turn to sing, she suddenly feels chilly from him singing about the hole in the bog. She runs down from there in the middle of the program, and Louise comes after her. Perplexed, Sarah tells her that the boy is not her son, Chris. Sarah drives back home and goes to retrieve the camera from Chris's room. Later, she has come to visit Des to show him the video. She thinks whatever happened to James is happening with Chris this time. Des takes the camera and looks at the video playing, but he tells her that he can't see what she wanted him to see. Sarah claims that Noreen was right. Chris isn't Chris, as James wasn't James. Des gets angry and slams the camera. She then tells him to call her crazy if he thinks she is one, but Des replies that he can't. Next, Sarah comes home with the broken camera. While she is trying to get the memory card out of it, Chris comes over to her and asks why she ran away from the school earlier. He makes her promise not to run away from him ever again. He tells her that he does not like to be left alone and hugs her. In the evening at the dinner table, she gives him dust cheese, even though he has never liked it, but he easily accepts and sprinkles it over his food. After that, she asks him to play their favorite game, but Chris could not follow along. Now Sarah is fully convinced that the boy standing in front of her is not her son. She utters that he is not her son and enunciates each word clearly. Initially, the boy shows his sad face with tears in his eyes, but within a moment, that expression changes into anger. He grabs Sarah's hands and throws her forcefully. When she gains consciousness partially, she sees the boy digging a hole in the ground. He then approaches her and drags her. Finally, he buries her head in that hole. Shortly after looking at the mud in his hands, he also collapses to the ground. Nonetheless, Sarah is able to pull her head out of the mud. she heaves the unconscious boy back to her place and put him in the basement. As it is said that the mirror always tells the truth, she takes a piece of the mirror and places it right beside the boy's face. The mirror reflects the face of a creature that is out of this world. The boy snarls and wakes up. Then Sarah asks what it has done with Chris when the boy suddenly jumps to choke her. However, she hits the boy and manages to free herself from his hold. The boy is shrieking and his body is shaking violently. Seizing the chance, Sarah gets out and locks the door from outside. Ear-piercing demonic shrieking continues for a while, and soon it changes into groaning. Next, Sarah comes all the way to that gigantic hole on the ground and walks toward its center. Slowly, the ground starts to engulf her. Sarah is now inside the hole beneath the ground. With the help of a flashlight, she observes her surroundings and sees a tunnel. She barely crawls through that tunnel and reaches the other side. There, she notices a human skull on the ground and gets closer to observe it clearly and sees more human skeletons lying on the ground. Her heart drops when she sees Chris's body among it. Right at that moment, a number of demon-like creatures arise, roaring. She hurriedly pulls Chris's body through the tunnel. Just then, a creature chases them and pulls Chris's leg at the other end. Sarah frantically starts hitting the creature's hand, and in the blink of an eye, the hand that's grabbing Chris's leg becomes that of a human. She looks down at the creature and is shocked to see that the hand belongs to someone that looks like her. She lands the final blow on her lookalike and finally brings Chris to the surface. Later, Sarah wakes Chris up, and when she tries to get him into the car, she finds it locked. So, she leaves Chris by the car and goes inside the house to get the car keys. While in the house, she can still hear the noises coming from the basement. Then, determined to stop this paranoia, she lights fire to the house and escapes with Chris to the city. In the city, Sarah joins the university and lives with her son. Even though she's moved from the country house, the room she is living in is full of mirrors.